and we can begin. So once again, welcome to today's class, and let's dive right into it. Before we do anything, I need to make sure that everybody has their IDE open as a dust. Let's have a few confirmations. Do you all have your Jupyter notebooks or your collabs open and ready to go?
I'm ready. Mine is open.
Very good. Thank you, Vincent. The rest, a few confirmations, please.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Good. So, let us move to our code then. All right. So this is our notebook from the first session. And before we get into anything new today, my friends, we must start with a recap of what we did last time. So last time we covered 3 topics: comments, syntax, which really you wouldn't even call them a topic. It's more of just a little tidbit of information that will, it's a small bit of information that will make your coding experience many times better if you understand them. But the real meat of the session, at least the first one, was variables. So let's recap. What is a variable? Anyone can unmute and answer.
A variable is a container for data.
Well done. Exactly. A variable is a container for data. Thank you, Vincent. And we went into quite a lengthy illustration just to stress the point that it is in fact a container. The variable is the container. The data can change. In fact, the data doesn't even have to be there to begin with. You can have an empty variable. That's allowed. In most languages anyway. There's always an exception to a rule somewhere with some esoteric language, but for most cases you can even have an empty container, and then of course you can put whatever you'd like, whatever data you'd like into that container. That's a good answer. The variable is a container for data. When you're making a variable, there are some rules you have to follow. There are 4 rules, so let's have 4 different people telling me the rules that must be followed. Let's have 4 different people.
They can not share names.
Very good. Thank you, Brazil. Would you like to tell us the logic behind not sharing names really quickly? Why can't they share names? Brazil, would you like to try that one? Why can't they share names?
Okay, I really can't explain that, but I'll.
Okay, for the
I
interest
know
of...
why they can't share, but I can't find the right words.
Alright, since we're just doing a quick recap, the logic is this. They can't share names because if you share names, first of all, in some languages, it's just straight up a syntax error. It won't compile, it won't run because there are 2 variables with the same name. But also, another reason they can't share names is because you might overwrite old data. So if I say, for example, name is equals to William, then I say name is equals to Brazil, I've overwritten William. Okay? So as well as knowing the rules and knowing the textbook reason, it's important to understand the logic behind it to become a successful programmer. Understanding the logic is the key thing. Thank you, Brazil. You're very correct. They can't share names. Reason number 2, really quickly. Let's just rush through them.
Did we say you can't use keywords?
You can't use keywords. Steve, give me a keyword, please. Anyone?
Print.
Exactly. Print, def, class, int, All of these are keywords. Another name for keywords is reserved words. Reserved words might actually be better because it tells the story. Essentially, they are reserved. They have their job and they are reserved for that job. Print, for example, is for outputting data. And all those other keywords, we will come across them. Thank you, Steve. That's absolutely correct. Reason number 3. Again, we're just shooting through them. We're just rushing through them, so say them as quick as you can. Reason number 3.
They can't contain certain symbols.
Very good. They can't contain certain symbols. And I like that you put the word certain there. Can you tell me one symbol that they can contain?
Plus.
No.
Addition.
No. That's a symbol that they cannot contain. I asked for a symbol that they can, and a symbol that is allowed. A symbol that is allowed in...
A hyphen?
No.
Underscore.
Thank you. Very good. An underscore. You can put an underscore. If you have a very long variable name, let's see if I have one here. If you have a very long variable name, you can divide it up with underscores just for the sake of easier reading. The underscore in most languages is the one exception to this rule. They cannot contain certain symbols, but you can also say they cannot contain any symbols apart from the underscore. But again, there's always exceptions. For example, if you ever go ahead and do PHP, you'll find that this is how they make their variables. So in PHP, you have to put a symbol, in this case the $sign. So there's always an exception, but it's good to have a general rule that can cover most cases. One more rule, and we are done with talking about variables for now.
They cannot start with a number.
Very good. They cannot start with a number, and that one I won't actually say anything more about it. They cannot start with a number. End of story. Thank you. Finally, we spoke about data types. We said that they fall into 2 broad categories with 1 special category to make a total of 3. Give me those 3 categories, somebody, please.
String.
Was that Alfin? I didn't quite see. There's people who are unmuted, so let's everybody mute unless you're answering the question. Okay, somebody started saying something. Whoever that was, please unmute and go ahead. You're on the right track.
A string.
Okay, Alfin, you're correct. String is a correct data type, but we'll look at the category. So what would string fall under? What category? Again, we're just saying it for the sake of our class. You might not find that name in an actual textbook. But we said text, didn't we, Alfin? Yes, we said text, and the one data type that we looked under text was string. So Alfin, what is a string in programming? What makes data a string?
I think it's anything that maybe falls within quotes.
You're quite correct, Vincent, although I was hoping to continue that answer from Alfin, but still, you've gotten it right. Thank you. So in that case, Alfin, let's continue with you. Can you give me the next category? I just want all 3 of them from one person. So you've given me text, or rather, we've landed on text together. The data type under text is string, and we've said, thanks to Vincent, we've learned that strings fall inside quotes. If it's inside a quote, it is a string by default. It can be double quotes, it can be single quotes. Whether you put 23 in between quotes, it will still be a string. So, Alfin, what's the other type that we looked at? The other data type, the other category of data types?
Symbols.
No, not symbols. Try again.
Can I add?
Go ahead, Vincent.
Numeric.
Numeric, thank you. Can somebody tell me the 2 data types? Sorry, yes, exactly, the 2 data types that fall under the category of numeric. Vincent, you can give us the first one, and someone will give us the second.
Age.
No, I asked for, that's an example, and it's a good one, but I asked for the data type. So you said the category is numeric. Now give me the data type that would fall under numeric. We only looked at 2.
Can we say?
Yes.
Integers.
Integer.
Very good. A couple of people have landed on it. Integer. And the second one we looked
Float.
at yesterday, float.
Float.
So integers are whole numbers, floats are decimals, and that was essentially it. The main takeaway from that whole discussion was, whenever you're assigning a variable, whenever you're putting some data into a variable, you must ask yourself, in the real world, is this something that I would count as a whole, or is this something that can be divisible? People, if you're counting the people in a room or the population of a country, that's definitely a whole number. You can't have a half a person. On the other hand, if you're counting the weight of a person, that can be, if you're measuring is the better word, the weight of a person, then that can be divisible. So you can have somebody weighing 50.5 kilograms, okay? And again, in all of these classes, more than the code, more than the syntax, more than all of that, the logic is important. So that's the logic you should apply when you're thinking about that. Thank you for all those people. Quite a number of people answered at the same time, which is great. Okay, so what about my special third data type?
Boolean.
Thank you once again, Alfin. It is Boolean. And why is it special, Alfin?
Is it that it takes two states only?
And what are those states?
Like, for example, true or false.
Not just for example, that's it. That's all of them. Booleans can only either be true or they can be false. Now there, the logic that we wanted to discuss, or the discussion that we had, was surrounding when is something in the real world actually falling into two states. And there are some obvious ones. There is dead or alive, there is married or single, there is up or down, there is on or off. For example, if you talk about a light switch, a computer, a car. But there are others that are debatable, like rich or poor, happy or sad, right or wrong. The logic behind this was just, you have to be careful when using Booleans, because some of the things might be obvious, but others might be subjective. But also we said, as a developer, as a programmer, you get to dictate in your own project where some of these things fall. So rich or poor, that's debatable, right? You give me 10,000 shillings right now, I'll be quite happy. I'll say I'm richer. You give a billionaire 10,000 shillings, doesn't make any difference to them. But in your program, you can dictate, you can say, if a person has 10,000 shillings, automatically they are rich. If they have less than that, they have 9,999, they are poor, right? That was the logic behind that. And that is all that we did yesterday. But then I gave an assignment. So, under text we looked at string, but we also have another one called character, which is short for character. Can somebody give me a definition and a few examples? Once again, we had a bit of an assignment, a small research assignment last time. We had looked at all these data types, but for text we just looked at string, and then I mentioned to you that in other programming languages, not necessarily Python, you can also have character, C-H-A-R, char for short. Let's have a definition from the class and a few examples, please. Well, from a pool of 19, I would hope at least 10%, which is about 2 people, would have done the work. Anyone?
I can. character from I'm trying to find a way to define it.
Go ahead. Anything will work. We'll see what we can garner from what you say.
Yes, it's more of a representation, like you'd have bits in a computer, one character. So it's more of a representation. For example, in a formula, I would say x is equals to, the x can be a character.
That is quite good. That is quite a good definition. So yes, and you're quite right. X is a character. But can you give me a solid definition? Let's see if we can get a solid definition from that example. Before we do that, let me just write what you said, which was absolutely correct. X. I'll just say X is equal. I'll just say X is equal to. No, let's say this. My character is equals to X. Okay? So, Steve, can you give me more examples of characters? Just the examples, not definition. I just need examples alone.
Maybe can I say H equals to Y?
Yes, and both of these are correct examples. The thing to understand, a character in most programming languages that you'll come across is a data type that is text, but it only has one symbol. Sorry, one letter. Let's just say one letter. One single letter might not be the best word. Even symbol might be better because this is also allowed. This in most cases would be allowed as a character. Same as this. As long as there's just one element is the word I'm going to choose. As long as there's one element, that's a character, right? So obviously such a thing would be better for memory management, right? Because it's just one character. But what's the use? What's the use of having just one character in a real program? And for this I go back up to what one of our friends gave us. Let's see if I can find it. Marital status, and I put a star on it. Now, can somebody tell me, having that definition, character having that definition, can somebody tell me how marital status might be represented with a character? Give it a try. Steve, let's come back to you. Give me the marital statuses that exist.
M.
Very good. M or
S.
Meaning what? M means what?
Single. M married, S single.
Exactly. So instead of writing the whole thing married, typing it out, instead of writing the whole thing single, you can represent them with just a character, and that would give the idea that you're trying to put across. Other ones include grade, right? You can have an A, a B, a C, right? Although this might fall apart once you start including things like C plus or C minus, but in many cases it could work. Another one, gender. M or what?
M or F.
Exactly, M or F, right. Can anyone think of a third one? Well, we won't dwell on it, but I hope you understand. Okay, good. The second assignment was, under numeric, we looked at our two data types, but in other programming languages, you might come across long. Define it and give examples. Let's have that definition and a few examples, please. Well, guys, I would highly encourage that you do these assignments. They're very important and they really help expand your mind. The learning that you do on your own is, I would argue, even more fulfilling than the one you will do in class. So whenever you get these assignments, please try to do them. Thank you, Steve, for giving this a try at least, but for the rest, please go ahead and try and do the assignments when I give them. They are quite important and they will help expand your programming skills. In any case, that's enough for the recap as well as looking at the assignments. I will come back to long later. Since I don't want to dwell on it here, I will come back to long and we can look at that together. Fine, so now we can move on to the next class, but if you'll allow me just a brief moment, let's see if I can help one of our colleagues. Yes, hello. And you go fifth. Alright, let's continue. So, we can now get started with today's class, although we will come back to this. This is something important.
Mr. Mugandi.
Muganda, yes.
Muganda, just a trial. Long, will I be wrong if I say they are just large integers?
You would be mostly correct. Long, if you put the word integers, that introduces another data type. Although if you say integers meaning whole numbers, again, it might work, although longs can be decimal. But long is a large number, so I'll just edit that last word in your statement. Long is a large number, a very large number. So some programming languages have made the capability for you to have a whole other data type just for storing really big numbers. So now back to our class, and again, we're just trying to find the logic in all the things that we look at. What in the real world would be so large that you might need a whole other data structure for it? Or really, even let's forget the coding part in the definition. What in the real world is something that will typically have a very large number? If you counted it, that is.
The population of a country?
Very good. The population of a country. That's excellent. Yes, that can go all the way into the billions nowadays. Wonderful example.
Can I say negative figures?
Well, you can, but again, there are things that if I had a bank account and I borrowed some money, maybe 500 shillings, I would be in the negative. I had nothing in my bank account and then I borrowed 500 shillings. I would be negative 500, but that's not a lot. So if you just say negative figures, that's not exactly correct, because that can be small. What when you count it, and it could be negative, so the point of it being negative, that doesn't make it incorrect. But the question is, what if you counted it, whether positive or negative, in the real world would typically be really large?
Can I have a trial?
Please, go ahead, Duke.
The numbers in pi.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you took the numbers, just the numbers after the decimal in pi, that goes on forever. And there are scientists who say you can get every single imaginable pattern within pi. Very good. Here's an example that I like to give whenever we're having this discussion. I like to dwell on it for a bit and have people think about it, but seeing as we're taking too much time in the recap, I'll just note it down and you guys can go ahead and have a think for yourselves. One thing that is always large and it always keeps on growing, that should be measured in a long if that option was available, is time. Okay, but I will take your examples. So population, the digits in pi, very good example, and then my own time. But rather than go into it and give that whole the usual illustration I give, let me leave this to you. Go ahead and give it your own do your own research, and if you'd like, you can tell me what you come up with. How is time usually measured in computers? Okay, that's enough. Thank you very much for that recap. Let's now open a new notebook. Okay, today's lesson is going to be quite short and to the point, and I would actually like it to be, we will have quite a bit of logical discussions, but this particular lesson is a good opportunity for everyone to try and write some code. So we're talking about strings. We've already learned, excuse me, we've learned about strings in the last lesson, and in this recap we know that strings are anything that occur within quotes. We know that you can have double quotes or single quotes. What you might not know is that you can put them in multiple lines. So for example, MSG, which stands for message, is equals to, and then I'm going to do something different. I'm going to put triple quotes, and this allows me to just write this allows me to put my string in multiple lines and it will still work. Let's give that a try. Yeah, it comes in different lines if that's something that you needed. So strings are something that we already know about. This is just the only new thing I'm telling you. If you put 3 quotes leading and then 3 quotes following, you can have your string in multiple lines. So that's just something worth remembering. This is quite important because in Python, the indentation is simply the distance from the wall, so to speak, the edge. The indentation in Python is very important. It's an error that you'll run into quite often. For example, take a look at this. Oops.